Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Tensei Slime Light Novel Summary Series here on AniMonolith. Picking up right where we left off, after finishing up all the interviews with his subordinates, Rimuru is now getting ready for an important meeting with Masayuki and his group the next morning. Despite trying to stay calm, the Rimuru was still a little nervous. Luckily, Testarossa would be helping to oversee the discussions, which eased his mind a bit. This was a high-priority meeting, so only a carefully chosen group would be attending. On Tempest's side were Rimuru, Benamaru, Rigurd, Shion, Diablo, and Testarossa. Representing Masayuki's side were Velgrynd, Minutes, Kalgurio, Bonnie, and Jiwoo. Since it wasn't time to start yet, everyone gathered in the waiting room. Shuna was serving tea and snacks, and the atmosphere felt calm but serious. While waiting, Rimuru shared his general plans with the group. First, Tempest would not take control of the Empire. Michael and Feldway were still missing, and Kondu, the mastermind behind much of the chaos, had already died. Since he was likely under Michael's mind control, Rimuru didn't see any reason to hold anyone accountable for that now. Secondly, Velgrynd, who now effectively led the Empire as its marshal, didn't seem to have any interest in territorial expansion. So the upcoming meeting would mainly focus on ending the war, handling reparations, and rebuilding the Empire. As for the 700,000 Imperial soldiers captured after the war, of course Rimuru wasn't about to just hand them back. They'd become a powerful labor force for Tempest's future development. Rimuru planned to assign capable managers to organize them properly and put their skills to good use. Well, you could call that a spoils of war, right? Just as things were wrapping up, a breathtaking woman with long, flowing blue hair walked into the room. Her sharp gaze locked directly onto Rimuru. It was Velgrynd. That piercing look made Rimuru feel a strange knot in his non-existent stomach. Honestly, he was nervous. Velgrynd was known for her fiery temper and tendency to act before thinking. Saying the wrong thing could literally start another battle, and as a peace-loving slime, Rimuru wanted to avoid that at all costs. "You wanted to see me?" he asked, doing his best to sound confident and composed. After all, he couldn't lose face in front of his subordinates. Velgrynd smiled slightly. "May I have a moment of your time?" she asked. And so the two of them decided to step aside and have a private conversation before the meeting began. "How's Veldora?" When Rimuru replied that the Storm Dragon was doing just fine, she let out a small, relieved smile. Seeing that smile made Rimuru's heart ache a bit, because when Rimuru had asked Veldora if he wanted to go meet his sister, the dragon had weakly said he was too busy. To put it simply, Veldora was still terrified of his sister. Rimuru couldn't even laugh at him for it. After all, he could sort of understand. Some situations are just too awkward to handle. So, he decided to let Veldora be. "So, what's up?" This time, I started things off. My heart was pounding. "I wanted to thank you." "Thank me? That's a bit... Why are you looking so pale? Are you expecting me to summon you to the back of the school?" "How do you know all that stuff?" I shouted, and Velgrynd chuckled. The journey to find my beloved Rudra was more exciting than I ever imagined. From the way she spoke, Rimuru could tell that the journey had been long and harsh. But for Velgrynd, who traveled across countless worlds driven by love and hope, it had been meaningful. She even mentioned that one of those worlds was Rimuru's previous world. That revelation completely stunned him. At the time, Velgrynd was wearing her Imperial military uniform, but Rimuru remembered that when she first appeared in Ramirez's labyrinth, she was dressed casually, jeans and a shirt, and had effortlessly crushed her enemies with unbelievable power. Just imagining that scene made Rimuru realize how unreal it must have felt for anyone who saw it. But what truly shocked him was the implication. If Velgrynd could travel through his old world, that meant there might actually be a path back to it. Of course, since Rimuru was technically dead, returning wouldn't have much meaning for him personally. But still, if dimensional and even temporal travel were possible, then perhaps it wasn't entirely impossible. At that moment, CL spoke up. "Understood. I will begin the analysis." Reliable as always, CL immediately started working on it. Rimuru couldn't help but feel grateful. If they could one day make returning possible, it would mean so much to the otherworlders living in this world who still missed home. Bringing the conversation back, Rimuru then asked, "So Masayuki, he really is Rudra's reincarnation, right?" Velgrynd nodded. "Yes, his soul is almost completely Rudra's, but now all that's left of him are those memories." Hearing that, Rimuru quietly realized, Rudra was truly gone. Even if Masayuki carried Rudra's soul, he was still Masayuki, not Rudra. Rimuru felt a strange mix of relief and guilt at that thought. He didn't want to sound insensitive, but pretending to be sad felt just as wrong. Velgrynd didn't get angry, though. Instead, she simply nodded and smiled faintly. Her fiery, commanding aura from before was gone. replaced by a gentle calmness Rimuru had never seen from her. "You seem curious," she said. "Throughout my journey, I experienced countless things, even more intense and vivid than my time with Rudra. It was like a dream, both long and short. That's why I'm grateful to you, Rimuru." Hearing that, Rimuru was honestly moved. Velgrynd, the once fearsome and prideful dragon, was now smiling peacefully, her presence soothing instead of intimidating. Then she added, "So, Rimuru, I swear to you this. As long as Masayuki holds no ill will, I will never become your enemy. In return, please never betray Masayuki." It was an oath Rimuru hadn't expected at all. Of course, he had no intention of betraying Masayuki in the first place, but he appreciated the sentiment. "All right," Rimuru said, placing a hand over his chest. "I swear, by my name and by my comrades, that I will never betray Masayuki. Well, unless we have some small argument or..." Before he could finish, Velgrynd's gaze turned icy cold. I'll do my best not to lie to him or fight with him unless it's absolutely necessary," Rimuru quickly corrected himself. He sighed internally. Why do I always end up swearing to things like this? After the conversation with Velgrynd, Rimuru felt much more at ease. Even though he still didn't quite understand why he had to make that oath, he was relieved to know he wasn't being resented. Just as he was preparing for the upcoming meeting in a good mood, Vesta suddenly burst into the room, panicking. King Gazel was on his way. This surprised Rimuru. Despite being expelled from the Dwarven Kingdom, Vesta had stayed in touch with his ducal family, one of the most influential noble houses under the royal family. As it turned out, Vesta was still the head of his household. His punishment hadn't included losing his title. That meant King Gazel likely intended to reinstate him in the future. It was a clever move. Punishing Vesta lightly avoided provoking his powerful family, who could even trigger a civil war if pushed too far. Rimuru found this understandable, but he still wondered why Gazel was coming in person when he had already asked Vesta to arrange a meeting soon. Vesta admitted that perhaps the king no longer trusted him completely, since he had been negotiating potion prices, recruiting pharmacists, and mobilizing manpower from his territory. Actions that might make it look like he was siding with Rimuru. Still, Vesta swore he remained loyal to Dworgen, and only acted for the kingdom's good. Rimuru realized Vesta hadn't betrayed anyone. He was simply doing what he thought was right. However, Gazel's sudden visit put him in a dilemma. Starting talks with the Empire now would be rude, but keeping a king waiting wasn't much better. Vesta assured him that King Gazel would never be so discourteous, and would surely stop at the border to request entry. As if to prove it, a messenger rushed in, reporting that the king and 5 attendants were waiting at the frontier for permission to enter. Caught between formality and urgency, Rimuru decided to handle it personally. Using a magic communication tool, he arranged an emergency meeting and went to greet Gazel himself, escorted by Diablo and Xion. Thanks to the teleportation circles set up in both capitals, travel between them now took only a moment. At the border, Rimuru met Gazel, and after a few friendly words, almost like a blood oath, they moved to a nearby cafe to talk privately. To avoid disturbing others, Rimuru declared, "I'll buy out the whole place today." There were still about 30 minutes left before the meeting with the Empire, and since he could teleport instantly, Rimuru decided to listen to Gazel until the very last minute. The meeting began with Rimuru apologizing for sending his army to war but forgetting to handle the cleanup afterward. Before Rimuru could respond, Gazel quickly added that his soldiers were still working at full capacity. And thanks to Tempest's support, they had survived, so no one held any resentment. He then revealed the real reason for his visit, to confirm whether Rimuru intended to ally with the Empire to attack Dworgen. Rimuru was stunned. The idea was absurd. Doing so would destroy all the trust Tempest had built with the Western nations. "We'd lose reliable allies and gain nothing but trouble," Rimuru said flatly. "How stupid do you think I am?" Hearing this, Gazel chuckled with relief. His Knight Commander Dolph stepped forward to apologize, admitting that the suspicion had been his idea. As the king's protector, he had to consider every possible danger, including the worst case, that a Tempest Empire alliance could isolate Dworgen diplomatically or militarily. If Tempest and the Empire worked together, Dworgen would be caught between 2 superpowers. Even without open conflict, their diplomatic leverage would crumble, especially since no one could stand up to Velgrynd or Veldora. And if the Empire did invade, Tempest might be unable to help Dworgen due to alliance restrictions. Or worse, helping might damage Rimuru's reputation in the West for breaking agreements. Understanding their concerns, Rimuru promised that he would carefully consider all alliance terms before making any commitments. Gazel nodded, satisfied, and the tension between them eased. Just then, Xion glanced at her wristwatch, a handmade gift from Rimuru and Kaijin, and reminded him that it was almost time for the meeting with the Empire. Rimuru stood up at once. "Let's go," he said. With Diablo ready to open the portal, the impromptu discussion ended. The group stepped out of the cafe and instantly returned to the capital, now joined by King Gazel himself for the upcoming conference. And that concludes today's video. Thank you for watching. Until next time. See you all in the next episode of AniMonolith.